Yes,
Yes.
we are live.
Are we live? Is this live? Is this live? Is it live?
Is this live?
Hello? Is it live? You can never really tell like when it hits the old Facebook. Like so. In fact, I don't think it's.
Are we live?
Are we live? I don't know. Guess we'll
What's that
find
old
out.
commercial? Is it live or is it Memorex? Is that,
Oh yes.
Is that even
Yeah.
a thing? Yeah. Okay.
Not anymore, but yes, it was a thing. Was a thing back in the
They're
day.
keeping a Memorex anymore? No, I don't think so.
That would be a tape, so probably not. I'm sure there's some audio files somewhere using tapes, just like they're using vinyl records and stuff. But yeah, not right now. So, all right, man, let's kick it off.
All right, let's blast off. Here we go.
That's
3,
for
2,
live.
1. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool. Man, we've got some good stuff coming up today on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got some lighthearted stuff, and then we're going to delve into some dark, really deep stuff.
Yeah. So I'm going to show my package on the show today. No,
You really got to reword that.
yeah. So I got a couple packages in the mail.
Right. Yeah.
And I thought they did a great job. One is a client with the agency I'm working through right now. And then another is actually a past guest on the show.
Okay.
Who sent us something. So I wanted to show those.
Oh, yeah.
And what really good. So there's some lessons to be learned in those as more and more stuff is, being delivered in the mail. More people doing, business online. So, and, one of them is is definitely an e-commerce type product. And the other is someone who, well, we'll just have to see when we get there, but it's, you don't have to have a product necessarily to do this, but you need something to give away. But the idea is that you're getting back in front of people in a very standout kind of way. So that's what we'll talk about that. And then we've got some, we're going to try some new technology here on the show today. Right. We're actually pulling in a video clip that Jonathan, you and I have talked about and thought was kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
And maybe a little controversial. We're not afraid of that. A little dark, maybe, but yeah, should be good. So with that said, that's the tease. That's the open. So let's drink some beer.
Let's drink some beer. All right.
So
I went first after our guest last one, so I'm going to let you go.
I'm going to go first. All right.
Yep.
So I've got another Texas specific kind of brand, going with the summer theme, the summer lager type feel. So I've got the Texas Family Beer Company, Golden Age Pilsner. So this is basically water that I'll be drinking today, yellow water. And yeah, because it's like 4.6% alcohol, German style pills, crisp and lively, superbly balanced from the Family Business Beer Company in Dripping Springs, Texas, which is about 5 miles down the road, 10 miles down the road, something like that. So that's what I'll be having.
Seems like every beer that you have is somewhere in Texas.
There's a lot of breweries around here for sure.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool because you get all these, unique beers. Problem is not many of our listeners can drink them, but unless they come visit or something.
That's right.
Not that you can visit anywhere right now, but if you could, Texas would be a good place. And plus you don't want to come as we're recording this in July. You probably don't want to come be here either.
No.
So it's a, just a almost translucent beer.
Wow.
So, super light.
It looks pretty hoppy.
Yeah, it looks very We'll see. Wow. What do you got on your on your side? I'm going back to dark beers next week.
Yeah, I've got a light one too, and in addition to that, I've got a pale ale today because, and I'll tell you, I waited till the last minute to get brews today.
Yeah,
I didn't have anything up until about 20 minutes till our show today, so I ran down to the little Topside down the road
Yeah.
and picked up I love so far everything that I've had from Cigar City Brewing has
Mhm.
been great. They've got a great brown ale. Some of their dark ales have been really, really good. Nothing I've had. So I went ahead out on a limb and just picked up this. It's a Gaia Berry from
Ooh.
Cigar City, but it
Uh-oh.
is a pale ale.
Yeah, and it's kind of got a fruity name, so
Yeah. So I'm expecting this to be probably citrusy,
yeah.
not going to be my thing, but just because I feel like I need to give Cigar City its due diligence and go
Yeah.
through their whole selection,
Okay.
so that's what I'm going to do.
And what city is Cigar City? Do we know?
It's down in Tampa. It's down in
Tampa.
Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I tells back in, I think it was like 2000, I want to say it was 2008, 2009. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But I was down at a trade show down in the Tampa area. And we went in there. There's actually Cigar City. They have a Cigar City. I think they have the Cigar City Brewing, and then they have Cigar City, just the big humidor or the big, cigar shop that you can go into that they're most famous for.
Okay.
And I walk in there, and I mean, they've got every cigar that you can ever imagine. Probably even have some Cubans.
So yeah, so is Cigar City just a store, or is Cigar City the nickname for Tampa? Do you know?
It's I'm assuming it would be the name of the store. It's named after the store down there because it's pretty
Okay.
famous.
Okay.
Because
Not
I
a
remember
cigar guy.
being down there. Everybody, it's like you got to go to Cigar City.
Yeah.
Like, okay, even though I smoke like a cigar like maybe 3 times a year. So
I'm sure our buddy Rich Sheffrin could answer that question, but
of course,
he's not here, so we'll just have to speculate.
he's
at
the
this point.
aficionado.
Yeah. So if there's anybody out there who wants to do a little research and let us know, is Cigar City a nickname for Tampa, or is Cigar City just the name of the store? Like, what's the that's the question. So, all right. Well, yours looks better than mine.
Yeah,
mine is almost.
Yeah, yours looks more like an IPA than mine.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a German Pils, so we'll see.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Cheers.
All right, cheers.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did the same at the same time.
We might have 2 losers on this one.
Yeah.
I have to take another sip on this.
So for me, I mean, it is what it is. It's a German Pils. It's, basically a little bit of, I don't know. I guess this is what they squeeze out of the hops when they finish making real beer. Like this is like the leftover beer, I guess. I don't know.
So it's pretty hoppy.
It's actually just pretty bland.
Bland. Okay.
I'm going to give that yeah. All right. I'm scoring mine a 1. This is my worst.
Wow.
Not from like a bad taste, from a lack of taste.
That's the worst.
Like there's just nothing. Like it's just kind of dirty water. That's about it.
Wow. Okay. Well,
so that's a real disappointment. I like the can.
Give their name out one more time since you basically ran them through the sewer.
Seriously, I'm gonna have to go hunt these people down. It's a family business beer company. They might want to find a new family business. I don't know. Together Over Beer. So I will definitely have to go. And this won an award, 2019 Great American Beer Festival silver medal winner. We'll see. It's a silver. It's not a gold. Everybody knows, like, if you don't win a gold, it's like, well, they said, what would Ricky Bobby say?
If you ain't first, you're last.
That's right.
Need to cue that up. We need to have that as a soundbite.
So this is living proof that if you're not first, you're last. Right here, silver medal. It's awful. That must have been like a bad year for submissions or something. I don't know. Man, that's rough. Yeah, I just can't do it. I'm
That's okay. We try to be fair. We try to be we
Fair
try not to steal from Fox News, but we try to be fair and balanced.
Yeah.
And we're going to call a spade a spade. If it's a bad beer,
it's a bad beer.
Yeah, it's a bad beer. So
I don't know. I guess if you're used to drinking Keystone or something, it'd be fine. But
yeah,
Just not my style for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to rate, like if it's, you know, I'm not so pure in my assessments that I can overcome like the type of beers that I like. So it's a little, you know,
Sure.
I am a little biased for sure.
Yeah.
So what's yours? Just your guava fruity melon beer thing.
Yeah. Well, it's very hoppy. So
Okay.
I don't even know what the I don't know what the hoppiness or the IBUs are on this thing, but I would, if I were to guess, I tried to pull it up on the website, but couldn't find it. But if I were to guess, it'd be like 50 or
Yeah.
something,
So what's the name
40,
of it again?
It is the Gaia Berry. Gaia.
Gaia berry.
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Gaia Berra. Gaia Berra.
Gaia berry. Okay. So that's
I
a whole
totally
different thing.
mispronounced that.
Yeah, that's a
Gaia
whole different thing. I have no, I mean, at least with the berry, I had an idea where it was going, but now I don't know what to say. So,
All right, let me pull this up because I got to give them at least their due diligence on this by explaining why it's so bad. Let's see. So it's okay. Here it is. It's
why it's so bad. Let me get the facts about why it's so bad.
All right. So this is okay. So I just pulled it up off of Cigar City Brewing.
Mm-hmm.
It is it's like, did you know? Traditional throughout Latin America.
Okay.
The Gaia Barra combines shirt. I don't know what that means. Shirt combines style, functionality, form. Is this an apparel? Am I reading a beer or an apparel shop? Let's see.
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor. Keep going.
Yeah. So we at Cigar City feel the same reverence, appreciation for the Gaia berry that we do for a citra hop varietal, an ingredient that imparts notes of tangerine, lime, and berries. See, that's the problem right there. Tangerine, lime, and berries.
Just pick a fruit. It's not a fruit salad. Like if you want a tinge of fruit, that's one thing.
So yeah. So they didn't get hoppy. They didn't get sour enough with lime. They had to add tangerine and also throw some berries in there. So
yeah. Just whatever you got laying around, throw it in, guys. This was one of those like 20% projects, you know, they do at Google, where like in your free time, you can just play around. Those don't always turn out well. So
nope.
That sounds
so here, I nailed it. IBU's 50. What did I say? 50.
Man.
I said it's a 50. So I nailed it.
There you go. Well, you have the palate, man. This show has helped you really develop your palate. You know, when we started this show, we didn't even know what IBUs were.
No, we were just clueless. And now we feel like we've developed another skill stack, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Beer tasters.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You probably great on the road.
You should just like start taking a cooler into your meetings, your sales meetings. Probably close more business like that.
Probably. Not with this one.
No, yeah, take some of the better ones for sure. All right. So let's talk about some did you give it an actual score? You didn't give it an actual score.
Oh, I didn't? Okay. I'm gonna be fair and I'm gonna give it a because I know that a lot of these IPAers, these millennial drinkers out here would probably give it a high rating. So I'm going to take that into consideration, given the fact that I have an obvious bias against IPAs, and so I'm going to counteract my bias and say I'm going to give it a fair score because I know a lot of people would like this because they just like this hoppy stuff. But I'm going to give it a 2. All right, I'm going to just an even 2. So I'm not gonna pigeonhole it, you know, like you did yours, and I'm not gonna sink it. But I'm gonna say if you're an IPA drinker, you might go higher. But you know, I feel like that's a fair for a guy that doesn't like IPAs. That's a fair score from me.
Okay, fair enough. Fair it is. All right.
I like Cigar City, and I don't want to give them, you know, I don't want to run them under the bus too much. So.
Yeah, I mean, you know, a podcast with our level of influence,
that's right,
easily just close the doors there. So we have to be careful about how we rate these things.
A lot of craft brew enthusiasts count on us.
Oh, absolutely.
To give them honest appraisal on the beer that they drink. So that's what
a lot of craft breweries count on us to not put them out of business by giving them a bad score.
One bad review and we completely
Yeah, it's like the opposite of the Tim Ferriss effect, right? We instead of putting people on the map, we put them out of business with a bad score.
That's right.
Oh, if only that would be cool. We had that kind of power and influence, but we don't. All right, so I was going to the mailbox the other day, and by the way, those listening, we have a Facebook group now called Persuasion by the Pint. We live stream in there on Fridays, so you can actually see the video of what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. You can see Jonathan, whether or not he just came from a workout or whether he had a little bit of time to cool off. You can tell the difference. So I went to the old mailbox earlier this week, and check out this. What was in the mail?
Ooh,
Jonathan?
Fancy.
I mean, is that like? I mean, it looks like, so it's a very shiny yellow. It looks like honeycomb almost. Like it looks like something Pooh Bear would just absolutely love to get in his mailbox, but then he would be very quickly disappointed that it's not honey. So,
you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of the mailers, I've talked about in the past, that from the Dental Profits, the Dan Kennedy member, and I can't, his name escapes me, but
Ed.
Yeah.
Ed
O'Keefe. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
That's exactly the mailers he used to use. So
yeah, these, I think you can get these at like Uline Shipping or somewhere like that. I know they carry stuff. I'm sure there's other places, but like I know the Uline has a whole catalog of these kinds of things.
Right.
So anyway, so nice, it's a 6x9 or 8, somewhere in that range package. And I'm like, oh, who's that from? And I see it's from, actually says on the label, from Mike Capuzzi, who has been on the show before.
Yep.
So hello, Mike, if you're listening. And
episode, I'm trying to think. It was like episode.
Man, if you have all the episodes memorized, I'm going to be impressed.
Something or other.
I've not been doing my homework. I need to get flashcards. All right. So I opened this up, and inside is a book. So if for those listeners who have not heard his episode, he talked about the Shook, which is the short book. All right. So the name of this, so first of all, it said advanced review copy and a little sticky note on top. And I was like, ooh, I'm special. I get an advanced review copy. Right. So it immediately made me feel special. I'm sure he did this for everybody he sent this to, but it made me feel
hold
special.
That up one more time. I just want you to see the title.
Which one?
The actual book.
So the book, so the book is the 100-page book.
Right.
And it's by Profitable Nonfiction Book Writing Tips by Mike Capuzzi. The pre-head is The Business Owner's Guide to Self-Publishing a Short Customer Attraction Book, also known as a Shook, according to Mike. So
bite-sized books, kind of like Shooks are kind of like the mini books that we've talked about. So.
Yep. But not as small. They're shorter, but they're not quite as small as those. So I think they're kind of a different category depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So the book was in there. And then here's the cool part that I wanted to share with everybody. He also sent a letter along with it. Right. So he said, Sean, I hope this letter finds you and your business doing well. I have enclosed an advanced review copy of my latest short, helpful book, Shook, the 100-page book, which I wrote to use on Amazon for lead generation, and I think you will enjoy. For the past several weeks, I've immersed myself in book promotion tactics and strategies to leverage Amazon effectively. My goal is to promote this Shook on Amazon as a pre-order during the week of July 20th, 2020, right? So he sent this out on July 7th is what it's dated.
Yeah.
And so that gives me about, 13, almost 2 weeks, to take action. Related to this effort, I was hoping you could help me with 3 really simple things. So a couple things that are already going on in this letter. One, he sent me a free book, right? So we got reciprocity going on.
Right.
Makes me feel special because I'm kind of on the advanced copy list, right? So I feel kind of special. Then he says in the first paragraph, he's been deeply, he's looking at strategy and promotion tactics and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to catch my attention because I'm interested in the same thing.
Sure.
So now I'm like, oh, let me read this to figure out what his tactics are because maybe I could use them too for my next book. So he says, related to this effort, I was hoping you could help me with 3 really simple things. So I like that he called them simple and he lists out 3 quick things, right? Number 1, buy a pre-order copy for as little as 99 cents on Amazon.com. This will also entitle you to a few special bonuses I'm creating. So even though it's going to cost me money, he's offered me some bonuses. So that feels good. Leave a review about the Shook on Amazon a day or two later, and snap a photo of you reading, holding, enjoying the 100-page book. You can email it to me directly at, and then he puts his email. He says, I will let you know when the Amazon pre-order is available. In return for helping me out, you will receive an invitation to join me for a private launch partner only training in August, where I'll be sharing all my Amazon tactics, strategies, and results. If you currently are planning to have books on Amazon, this will be super valuable to you. I appreciate you and your help very much. Regards, Mike Capuzzi. So pretty cool. Like, he's asking for a favor, but he's giving a lot of value in return.
Absolutely.
For the favor, which is key.
And we talked about that, recently from that, what to say exactly, Phil, he's going to be on, we're going to have him as a guest on here in a couple of weeks here. I think he's going to be coming on, but exactly what to say.
Yeah.
But we were talking about that a couple of episodes back of like, hey, can you do me a really quick favor? Most people are, and especially when you use the art of reciprocation, when you give something to somebody up front and then say, hey, can you do me a quick favor?
Right.
Brief, quick favor. That's big, because if you're encouraging somebody, most people want to help others. So in that case, it was, there's so much value tied to that. So.
Yeah. And he put it, quick favor. He did it as simple. Like, here's 3 simple things.
Right.
3 really simple things.
Really?
Right.
Yeah.
So, and they are pretty simple, right? I mean, they're, especially for guys like us who he knows, I'm sure he sent this out to quite a few people, but it's nice to give people just a clear step-by-step what you need to do to help you and make it easy for them, and then give them a reward for doing it. So he's taking all those things into consideration. All right. So another thing that I got this week, this is a client we're working with over at ROI Machines. And so they are a supplement company, and they do pharmacy curated supplements. So they have pharmacists. They started as a pharmacy. Now they're also doing supplements, but they actually curate vitamins. Their pharmacists like prepackaged vitamins in a certain way. That's really cool. So I wanted to share that. And I wanted to share their branding because I thought their branding was really good. And just the overall experience. Like, usually when you get a supplement, like, you just get a bottle in the mail and it's, it's not all that exciting. There's a few that have been pretty good that I've gotten over time.
Sure.
In fairness, like on it, their Total Human package is really cool and nice package. But this one is, so it comes in a fairly ordinary brown box, but it's not like a regular shipping box. It's actually, you can tell it's a crafted box. It's got their label on the top that says hello to your mix.
Okay.
Because their thing is they custom mix your vitamins for you based on what you need.
Right.
And so you open it up, and inside you got this little
that's pretty good packaging. I like that.
Yeah, so it's a nice little insert that's holding the actual vitamins. So the vitamins are in a separate box. You pull those out, and they actually roll out into these little serving packets that tell you morning, noon, and night, or morning and evening and night what to take, right? So each one's like its own little sachet.
Right.
And what's really cool is that it actually says, let's see if I can get that. So it's actually got your name on it. It says, "Good morning, Sean."
Wow. Talk about custom.
It says, "Good evening, Sean." And it tells you which of your pills you're taking. And like I said, they start in the pharmacy business, and this is a little bit more standard, but most, so you just throw this in your cabinet and you just peel them off, throughout the day as you need them. And
so
they have different packages.
So you pull out the mornings first, obviously, then your evening, and then the morning follows. So that's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
One following right after the other. So exactly, you're not, it's not like you're trying to remind yourself or you forget because you've always got the next one pulled out.
Yeah. So if you see the first one says good morning, the second one says good evening. And there's actually in this pack, because this is like a heart health pack. It actually has a good night. So there's like one that you take like right before bed. So in this particular package, there's actually three that you take. And they just tear right off and all that. So between the packaging, kind of making you feel special and all those things, and I thought it was a really cool experience to get your vitamins as opposed to just opening a pack and it's another bottle in the cabinet.
Yeah. Plus the using your name, which is one of the most powerful words in the English language, is your own name, right? When it comes to influence and persuasion. So they're using your name on the packaging.
Yep. Yeah. So it feels very custom. I mean, it is custom, but it reminds you that it's custom every time you take the package.
Yep.
So their stick rate is higher than the industry average because of little things like that,
Well, yeah. And I could see why, because I mean, it's customized to me. I feel like it, regardless of whether it is. I mean, they could be, who knows? I mean, for all I know, they're sending out the same thing to everybody else. Yeah. But because my name is on that, it feels special. It feels like it's tailored to me.
Yeah. So, well, I'll do a follow-up on this, because once we're working on some stuff that will go live in the next week or two. Yeah. And once that's live, I'll have a little bit more ability to talk about what they're doing and how they're making them custom.
Right.
But I can't do that right now. So just stay tuned for future episodes where we'll go even deeper into that. But the company is called 10 Mix or 10 Vitamins, TIN. 10vitamin.com, TINvitamin.com.
Okay.
So great people. Like I said, they're actual pharmacists. And they actually started the vitamins because they found out a lot of their pharmacy customers were not getting the right, just regular supplements in their diets. So they started doing vitamins as well. And now they're doing vitamins as a standalone as well. So pretty cool evolution of the business. They're based out of California, and really cool company. So we'll talk more about them in future episodes. So that was kind of the two things I got this week that I thought were just really neat and thought I'd share with people. You've got something that I forwarded to you actually earlier this week, and you were like, "Wow!" And it was a video that was kind of going around the interwebs with all the controversy that's going on and things like that. But I thought it was a really good analysis of, and let's be honest, it's probably biased in one way or the other, but the fact is, like, the guy makes some really good points, and whether you agree with the overall opinion of this guy or not, you have to stop and think about what he's saying a little bit.
Yeah, you do. And here's what I would encourage listeners, like, get rid of all the, because we're so primed, and I say, we're primed politically in this day and age. Everything is so apolitical, where you're one side or the other. This is not about politics. It's about persuasion and influence. So I would say that, we've talked about system 1 and system 2 thinking. You have got to get past your system 1 thinking which is that surface level thinking, and try to engage in this video that we're about to play from a kind of a system 2, where you start really thinking about it and not really having a reaction to it. I don't want you to have a reaction to it. I want you to really think about it and think about how this is being used. And listen, it's being used on both sides.
Absolutely.
But what you're going to hear today is being used a lot in terms of what's going on around us with this pandemic and how we're primed to think. So I want you to think and not react. I want you to really delve into it. And you can do a lot of your own research on the side. But the biggest thing is to understand that governments, this is persuasion and hypnosis, and hypnotherapy is not just used in the medical profession. It's not just used in business. It's used by the government as well. I mean, they hire guys like Chidini, that we've talked about many times, and they hire people like that to in politics all the time. So they're not, they're not clueless about how this stuff works, and they're using it all the time against us.
Yeah, a lot of the groundbreaking research and all this stuff comes out of military projects and all, where they're trying to learn psychological warfare and everything
Right.
else, to get the advantage,
Yeah.
to both save lives and win wars without as much actual combat. Right. I
Right.
mean, that was the
Exactly.
idea behind. By the way, did you ever see the documentary about the Ghost Army? Have you ever seen that?
No.
It's fascinating. We'll have to talk about that on another
Ghost Army.
episode, but yeah,
Sounds fascinating.
yeah, you could probably look it up, but there's a literal division of the U.S. Army back in World War II, I think, that they called the Ghost Army, or at least that's what the documentary is called. It's just all about psychological warfare, and that kind of, it was really cool because, it was both to win the war, but it was also to save a lot of lives.
Sure.
By using psychological tactics instead of just brute force tactics, right?
Right.
And this video is kind of the same way. Some of the stuff this guy's pointing out, it's to control crowds psychologically so that they don't have to do it with brute force.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's too obvious if you do it with brute force. So you want to try to figure out how to do it psychologically and use the power of the crowd to your advantage, and a lot of other things. We'll just roll that beautiful bean footage.
So the video is kind of like, it's nothing spectacular to watch. So what I'm just going to do is play the audio because I've got it queued up here.
Yeah. It's literally an old guy sitting in a chair, and he's reading his notes. Like you're not missing anything by missing the video.
That's right. So the words are more, persuading than anything, but all right, here I've got it queued up. So I'm going to play like the first 45 seconds to a minute of it.
Okay.
And because those are really important. We're going to play this up and then kind of discuss it, because he talks about, and when you're listening to it, think about the framing effect that's going into what you hear over the last 3 or 4 months. So,
right.
Governments have been using a range of Orwellian mind control tricks during the coronavirus crisis. The slogans, the clapping, and the symbols have been carefully used to enable the authorities to take control of our thinking. I'm grateful to Dr. Colin Barron, a former NHS doctor and eminent hypnotherapist who's the author of the book Practical Hypnotherapy, for pointing out to me just how our minds have been taken over and how we've been very successfully and skillfully manipulated into believing the lies we've been fed. Elected governments, aided by specialist behavioral scientists, have been brainwashing millions into accepting the coronavirus propaganda. The mind is a wonderful thing. It responds in sometimes unpredictable ways. So, for example, if you see a headline which says, Boris Johnson is an alien, then most people will probably dismiss it as quite silly nonsense. But if the headline says, is Boris Johnson an alien? Readers will be more likely to suspect that the British Prime Minister might indeed be from another planet. And research shows that if people see a headline which says, Boris Johnson is not an alien, then their suspicions will be raised still higher.
Okay. I'm going to pause it there because that's pretty interesting right there in of itself. We talk about, obviously in copywriting headlines, the headline is the most important part of the copy because it gets you to move further.
Yeah.
But asking a question like that generates, and we see it all the time in news, sites today have become nothing more than clickbait. And you see this practice more than anything from a persuasive standpoint to get you to, dive further. And these articles and these links are shared on social media. You look at Drudge and you look at a lot of other sites like that. They're asking a lot of questions that get you to dive further.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure there's, of our audience, I'm sure there's some people that are already like had a reaction to this just with the words that he used setting up his argument. Right. I mean, he's making his own argument. I mean, let's be honest, right? He's, he talked about, brainwashing and propaganda. Mm-hmm. So he's definitely biased towards his side of the story.
Sure.
Like I actually think it could have been a much more powerful video if he had not used some of those words, because he was tipping his hand
when he said propaganda. When he he used the word propaganda associated with the related to the pandemic.
Right. So he's like this, the brainwashing around the pandemic, the propaganda around the pandemic, so, but what's interesting is, he knows a guy who's a practical hypnotherapist who wrote a book called Practical Hypnotherapy.
Right.
And they see some of the commonalities in what's going on. And this idea of, like you said, the headlines, obviously this is in England, UK. So Boris Johnson, the prime minister, if you just come out and say something as fact, like it doesn't have a lot of weight. When you question it, it's got a little more weight. But when you deny, it actually almost has the opposite effect.
Right. Because people want to say, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I just want to dig in.
Yeah. At least a good chunk of the audience is going to be like, always believes that the government is lying to you. Right. It didn't used to be that way, but in the last, 20, 30 years, I think it's definitely the tide has turned. Like our generation is very different than our parents' generation, who grew up trusting and believing the government for the most part. That's obviously shifted a lot now.
Yeah.
So, if people just flat out deny or the government flat out denies, then it perks up your curiosity.
Yep.
I remember when I was writing financial newsletters, Porter Stansberry, one time he said, "You'll know something's going to happen when they deny that it's about to happen." Like that's how you know they're about to tip their hand when they absolutely vehemently deny we're not going to print any more money.
Right.
You know that they're a month or so away from printing money.
Right.
So that kind of stuff. I don't think that's always true, but it certainly gets people's attention.
Yeah.
Right. Because why would you be saying it if it's not true?
Right. Right.
Like, why would you even bring up that he's not an alien?
Yeah. What's the need? Exactly. Yeah.
Right. If it's actually true that he's not an alien, I wasn't thinking he was an alien, but now that you mentioned that he's not, why did you bring that up?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, your kids, if they're like, no, I didn't go to the liquor store while I was out.
Right.
And you didn't ask. Like, it's like, I wasn't even thinking about that. But now that you mention it,
right.
That kind of stuff. So, the very fact that you mentioned something that would not normally be mentioned, I think is kind of the point of that third thing.
Yeah. It's like saying, Sean, you're not a drug dealer,
Right.
Like, wait a minute. Why would I even say that? That's weird.
I wasn't thinking.
Then it makes me want to say, okay, wait a minute, Sean.
Yeah.
What have you been doing? Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
why would you say that if there's not the slightest bit of validity to that makes me intrigued? Like, okay, wait a minute. Is Sean got a meth lab somewhere? Or?
Yeah. So, the way that shows up in some of these, the pandemic is either side can use that tactic.
Absolutely.
To get you to go look at something that they want you to, it's almost like misdirection, right?
It is.
So they get you to dive into a certain thing. Like, masks are not effective. Well, I just assumed they were effective, but now you're telling me they're not. So maybe they're not, maybe they are. I don't, but now I got to go investigate.
Yeah.
And now you create this polarization, which is what we're seeing in the US. I've got a couple friends on Facebook that are in Canada and they go back and forth. And one of the girls that works at the agency where I'm at, she's in Ukraine. So I've and people in UK. What's interesting is that the US seems to be the most polarized. Like like there's more coverage here than anywhere else in the world.
Right.
So there's more right and wrong. There's more left and right than anywhere else. And it is an election year. So that's a big part of what's going on. Like up in Canada, like 10% of the people apparently are wearing masks right now. And there's, there's an ordinance, but nobody's paying attention to it.
Right.
Here it's like Hatfields and McCoys, masks and no mask. Like
there's no, it doesn't seem like there's a lot in between, really.
There's no in between, So, and you can look at my Facebook post and see which side I'm on. It's pretty clear. But so what do you have another clip there? Or do you want to say more about this?
So I want to follow up, and what I'm going to play to follow up. So think about in terms of phraseology and using. We've had Michelle Mazer like laser. She's been on the show before. She talked about her 3-word. She's got a book, the 3-word rebellion,
Mhm.
So using those memorable phrases, I want you to be thinking about that when I play the next clip, because it's, using those chunk phrases that
Mhm.
are easy for us to remember. So just be
Yep.
thinking about that here. And I'm going to play. All right, here we go. Come on. Come on, technology.
Oh, do you have to reload the?
Well, it's like it's circling. Here we go.
Manipulating and tricking the mind is a professional business. And we've been brainwashed, and the brainwashing has been very subtle. We've all been quietly hypnotized and indoctrinated to accept the new mass hysteria generated by governments everywhere. Many people now enjoy the lockdown and they don't want it to end. It enables them to avoid responsibility for their own lives. Do you remember who said, open quotes, through clever and constant application of propaganda, people can be made to see paradise as hell and also the other way round, to consider the most wretched life as paradise? Well, it was Adolf Hitler, who was a master at mass manipulation and the use of subliminal techniques. And it was Hitler who also commented that it was a good fortune for governments that the mass of people do not think. The Nazis were very good at controlling people's minds. Goebbels once said that if you repeat a lie often enough, then people will believe it. He also pointed out that if you want to control the population and you have to deal with an opposition, then you should accuse the other side of the sin or the trickery which you yourself are using.
That's a good one
So
there.
governments everywhere have been accusing those who are telling the truth of spreading fake news. Anyone who doesn't toe the party line is monstered and dismissed as a dangerous conspiracy theorist, though the big conspiracies have actually all been coming from governments. Countries around the world have been promoting slogans to persuade their citizens to behave as required. In China, there was a slogan which said, "If you love your parents, lock them up." In Taiwan, people were told to visit each other is to kill each other. At first glance, the slogans which are heavily advertised and promoted in the UK seem harmless enough. We all recognize them. Some, such as "We're all in this together," seem fairly innocuous, though we perhaps might be forgiven for adding the rider that we're all in this together, unless we happen to work as advisors to the Prime Minister. The first trio of phrases which were promoted everywhere in the UK were "keep your distance," "wash your hands," "think of others." More recently, new phrases have been added to the repertoire: "stay home," "save lives," "protect the NHS."
Mm-hmm.
The rhythm and pattern used.
All right, we'll stop there. But
Yeah. So the
three phrase.
There's a lot of stuff there, interesting. But yeah, the end, what he ended with there about the three phrases, like you said, we had Dr. Michelle Laser on, and she talked about the 3-word rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Flatten the curve was a great 3-word rebellion. We talked about that, I think, the second time she was on, because it was she was up in Seattle and things were just happening.
Mm-hmm.
The cool thing about these phrases is they sound very helpful. They sound reasonable. Wash your hands. Obviously, that is reasonable. But it starts to get you in this acceptance of what the authority is saying, right? And if you've ever watched, like, I don't know, some old Chuck Norris movies where he's a prisoner of war or anything like that, and they pull people into the room, like that's what you do with prisoners of war to get them to turn, is you start out with very subtle, easy asks.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right? And then you see nothing really happens. Nobody gets hurt. You're like, oh, okay. So I guess it is okay to do this.
Breaks down. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And they just kind of slowly intensify the request, but because it's happened over time, you don't notice it as much.
Sure.
As if it had been right off the bat. You're asked to, like, if we had started this whole thing with close your business or something like that, as opposed to flatten the curve or wash your hands, that'd be a very different thing than
shut businesses down.
Yeah, shut business down, except on file for unemployment. Like those probably would not be the best ways to start out, right?
No.
So yeah, I mean, and I know there's some bias in this video, this audio that we're playing. We're well aware of that. But if you can listen without that bias being triggered, you can see throughout history. It's not just this. Like throughout history, you can see where these types of phrases are used. I'm always amazed at just how good the government is at coming up with these acronyms and phrases. Like the acronyms they come up for laws that they pass and bills that they pass are absolutely amazing. Like it makes me jealous as a copywriter that they can come up with the phrases and the Affordable Care Act, sounds like it's
Affordable
a great
Care Act. Right. And then even for this recent round of bailouts or, Corona relief, they called it the CARES Act.
Yeah.
Well, who's gonna, you
can't argue with the CARES Act.
Can't argue with the CARES Act.
I mean,
because who wants to argue with the CARES Act, right? I mean,
yeah, and you're not going to look into it, right? Because I mean, it's a CARES Act. I mean, can't be anything bad in that,
right?
And both sides do it. Like, believe me, I mean,
absolutely,
both sides do it. We're not saying that that's not the case. It's been happening as long as they've been passing bills. It's just the way they are. But yeah, so he talks specifically though about having these 3 and 4 word phrases in groups of 3. And I'd say if you can find, I guess if we put a link on the show page to the notes, it's kind of fun to just go read all the comments.
It is.
Because there's one thread in the comments where people are coming up with their own triplet phrases. And it's just like all these, on both sides, because it's on YouTube. So both sides are giving their 3-word phrases. And it's really interesting to watch. Like you can see how if you got a group of people together in a room, you could come up with these phrases pretty quick.
Sure.
Because the mob just kind of perpetuates itself.
Well, what's the one that he mentioned? We're in this together, which is really just grinded on me, ever since I first heard that, because we're not all, I mean, if you think about the phraseology, if you really delve into that, we're not all in this together. I mean, we're a big country and we're separated by many states and many different demographics. And, so, I mean, to use a phrase like that but I understand why they're doing it. Obviously they want to feel like we're all included in this together in this fight, so that's, and a lot of this, to be fair, a lot of this was used during wartime propaganda. You talk about during the World War II, obviously governments want people to rally against the common enemy. And whether it's not whether it's right or wrong, it's whether it's the fact, that's what they're deemed to do, is to use persuasion and to get people to rally around a common cause. I mean, you think about the second, the first and second Gulf Wars that we had. Obviously, those were common causes. We had phrases. We used, we had taglines for all of this stuff. If you really do your research and really study all of the history of war and the history of our country, that's just part of it. You want your countrymen, you want your people to rally around something against the common evil, whatever that is.
Well, and then let's take a step back and just be a little bit, less conspiracy minded and just say, okay, just from a pure communication, standpoint, having catchy phrases works.
Yeah, of course it does.
So social distancing as a phrase is easier to remember, and kind of the concept and everything. Everybody's on the same page. They're all talking about the same thing.
Right.
As opposed to, well, don't get too close to people.
Right.
First of all, that sounds kind of negative, right? So you don't want to do that. It needs to sound positive. So you kind of come up with this social distance. Like it's kind of nebulous. It's not necessarily negative, although it has become, for one side. But opposed to don't get near somebody.
Yeah.
Like that sounds very confrontational, and that would not have been accepted as easily. Social distancing sounds like a safe, reasonable request, right? Sounds like a safe, reasonable practice. And that's how propaganda works. It always sounds safe and reasonable. And I can hear people like screaming in my headphones right now, like, it is safe and reasonable. Right. And that's why it's effective, because there's a certain portion of the population, because we're dealing with a mass crowd, that is immediately going to adopt it because it is safe and reasonable under most circumstances. But the fact is, it's still being used as a persuasion tool. And if you don't see that, then you're more susceptible to, when they increase and ask for more and more and more, you're going to be more susceptible to that when it's no longer reasonable.
Right.
And that's kind of I think that's what we're saying, what this video is saying that we're listening to, and what some of the arguments are. As
stay home, stay safe.
Yeah.
That's sounds reasonable, right? If you stay home, you're not, you're keeping others, including yourself, safe. You're not at risk. I mean, very clever to do that. Stay home, stay safe. And you saw even in social media, from a social media standpoint on Facebook, people putting up the, back in March and April, putting up the, the profiles with the banners, stay home, stay safe.
One thing he alluded to is like the clapping. He mentioned it, but he didn't go into it. Like, so the, clapping for the workers that are on the front lines, or even that, like on the front lines. Yeah. Like that phrase is engineered to put a special group of people and call attention to a special group of people, as opposed to, because I mean, let's face it, like if it's as bad as everybody says it is, then everybody is on the front lines.
Sure.
He's like, no, medical people, they're more on the front lines. Well, no, if you own a restaurant, or you're a grocery store owner, like a clerk, like you're all on the front lines, right?
Right.
And it becomes this kind of mantra and all this kind of stuff. But one thing he talked about was the clapping, and he makes a great point. Like, that was not engineered in the beginning, but what authorities will do when they will take advantage of those trends very quickly. Like, and that's what he said. He's like, the clapping may not have started as a political move or as a propaganda move, but it was quickly attached by the media and by, whatever, to promote that and to spread that idea.
Sure.
For whatever reason, you want to spread it or use it.
Yeah.
And again, it's happening on both sides. So it's not just one side, each side has its own, phrases and causes and things that it believes and like that. And you have to figure out, pick a side, or, try to pick the middle ground, which is very, very difficult to do.
Difficult. Yeah.
Because like
we're all being primed. I mean, we're framed one side or the other, and that's what's difficult, is that you have to look beyond the framing, and it's very difficult in a very polarized time that we live in to kind of step outside and say, okay, where's the real truth? Because quite frankly, we're inundated with so much information and so many different scientific, so many facts and so much scientific data, that it's different all the time. And so, from a marketing standpoint, you always, that old phrase, Sean, when I have too many choices to make, most people end up doing nothing. And so they don't know what to believe. So they don't know which way to go. So you almost kind of by default end up falling into one of two categories, right? Because you don't know how to decipher so much. There's so much information out there. So by default, you end up kind of like, walking into the side or kind of stepping into the side that you currently are most comfortable to be affiliated with.
I would actually take it even further. I would say that you kind of get tired and you just end up kind of doing what the majority is doing.
Sure.
And then that majority grows. And next thing you know, like that's kind of the accepted way things are. And you get, the phrase I hate the most of all phrases from this whole thing. It's not a new phrase. It's just it happens after every crisis.
Yeah.
Is new normal.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah.
So there's now this new normal, and it's
Right.
just like, oh well, I guess it's this resignation that, oh well, I guess this is just the way it is.
Right. And we should just accept that,
Yeah.
like
yeah. So
just swallow that hook, line, and sinker. But
yeah, and I guess sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's you want to fight against that. I mean, sometimes you do need to fight back.
Sure.
And that's something that every individual, every family has to decide for themselves. But the point of this episode really is to
just understand,
slow down and know that this is happening on both sides.
Yes.
And another thing he said in there is if you're on the one side, the way that you want to point out the tactics you're using, that the other side is using them before they do, right?
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to the old, we've talked about the old Schlitz beer ads, like the first person to talk about a specific thing kind of owns that idea. So if you can point out that the other side is using these tactics before they pointed out that you're using them,
right,
then you kind of have the upper hand.
Yeah.
So, that's, and hey, love him or hate him. You've seen Trump. Trump has been using these tactics for years before he was president, before he was campaigning for president. Like that's how he did negotiations. Like he understood all this stuff.
Yeah.
That's why he's negotiated some of the deals he's done. So, but now you see, mayors in small towns using it. You see, governors starting to catch on. And I think some of what we could have we'll have to touch on this on another episode, but the Lucifer effect. I don't know if you've seen that book.
Oh yeah.
About the Stanford experiment of the jailers and the prisoners and things like that. I was talking to somebody this week, and I can't remember who it was now. It may have been Ben actually, but anyway, it was this idea that there was a study. It was going to be a 2-week study. Half the people were prisoners, half the people were guards at, I think it was Stanford University, and it was a psychology experiment. And the guards very quickly started seriously abusing the prisoners. And it got so out of control that the 2-week experiment was halted at 6 days.
Wow.
And there's a whole book about it called The Lucifer Effect. And I think some of what's going on from a psychology and persuasion point of view is that for the first time with these kind of sweeping mandates is mayors and governors have seen power that they've never seen before.
Sure.
Right. And now it's like, oh, I can just close stuff down. That's kind of cool. It's like a kid with a new toy. It's just like, wow, this is cool. Even if it started out with the best of intentions, now there's just something in our brains that when we get control and we get power, it typically, what's the old saying? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah. Straight from Lord Acton.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of absolute power handed out, over the last 5 months, 3 months, whatever it's been. So yeah, it just be aware. We probably lost half our listeners, so we're down to 2 again.
But we want to be fair, like we said.
Yeah.
We want you to think. We don't want you to automatically just say, what we're saying is right, but be thinking about this. Whenever you hear phraseology, whenever you hear a new phrase or a new tagline that's used in the politics of COVID-19 and pandemics and coronavirus, start thinking, thinking about this. And we'll post a link to this, or we'll actually post this video, because we're not going to go through the whole thing, but we'll post a video on this particular episode. And I would encourage people to go through it and try to, limit your bias, kind of step outside, but understand that both sides have used this throughout. This is just part of propaganda that's being used on you to get people to understand or buy into an idea. And
And I would add that you actually can't create a movement without this stuff.
right.
Like, I don't care how noble the movement is, you got to use these tactics to get the mass and the groundswell that you need to actually make it a movement. You know, we've talked about that with some of the other books we've talked about with, you know, creating cults or creating followings and all that kind of stuff, you know, developing your own language, developing catchphrases, creating a common enemy, like all these things, you know, are being used all the time around us. We just have a really like obvious kind of lab going on around us on both sides on multiple issues. I mean, we've got COVID, we've got race war, we've got like, it's all around us right now. So like if you're into persuasion, like it's actually a pretty cool time to be alive because you can actually see it happening on a global perspective, unlike ever before.
Yeah. And one thing that comes to mind, you know, you think about, because I try to like, okay, let's think about how another side, because we've been talking about, okay, governments, which have been, you know, against or kind of leaning towards this. But you think about, I think about the movie that about Dick Cheney. It was kind of a parody that came out, I guess, a couple of years ago with Christian Bale, and I cannot, it escapes me off the top of my head, but you know, it talks about, you know, them using words, obviously, you know, during that time during the Gulf War, you know, weapons of mass destruction, man, that weapons mass destruction, mass destruction. I can get on board. They've got weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. So I mean, that's easy to remember, right?
Yeah. How could you not want to stand up for that, right?
Exactly.
Like nobody wants weapons of mass destruction laying around. I don't care politically who you are. That's
that
just not
sounds
good.
Really scary.
Yeah, that sounds like something you probably ought to get rid of. You know, and it worked. Like you know, it worked.
People on board. Yeah.
So yeah, both sides use it. You know, been using it for social policies, war policies. You know, corporations use them. Like everybody uses them. You know. And you know what? If you want to build your own movement, you're probably going to have to use them. The only question is, how ethical are you going to be using these same ideas, right? And that's where somebody like Dr. Michelle with her 3-word rebellion, where it's used in a very positive, empowering way. I mean, even my shirt, right? It's a 3-word rebellion phrase, right? Rise up, champion. Like that's, you know, that's just something where I'm calling people out to rise up and be who they were created to be. Like it's like,
speaking of 3-word rebellion, I got to mention, touching back into politics. So Biden, their campaign released their 3-word rebellion, which is, let's see, I'm trying to remember because it's 3 B's. It's build back better, right? Build back better is their new campaign slogan.
That's better than I'm with Hillary, for sure.
Build back better. Is that persuasive? I don't know. I just kind of have a from a standpoint of memorability, I guess a little bit build back, but I don't like the word back. Back is kind of a negative. Don't you think back is a negative word? It's like, feels like going back.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. I mean, the alliteration works. It's got a nice little rhythm. That's an interesting one. I could definitely see how it could work, especially to that base. I could see how that works because they do want to go. I think a lot of them want to go back to Obama or Clinton or whatever, right? So I could see in that case, back is better for them.
Sure.
And then build is more future focused, which is good. Like build is great. Better is great. Right. Yeah, I agree. The back is a little.
Back's like going in reverse, and whatever you think, maybe in reference to Trump, if you think that, he's messed things up. So you're building back to where it used, like you said, prior to Trump.
Right.
And that seems to be the message they're trying to get across. But I just think the word back, I think they probably could have used a better word than back. Cause I don't think most people like the word back. It feels like you're going backwards.
Yeah, typically you want to move forward. The most successful campaign slogans,
Exactly.
and presidential slogans have always been future focused for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it almost feels a little too clever too.
Yeah.
I think that's like it's
BBBs.
a little it's a little too alliterated. Like
Sure.
I know when I edit people's copy, one thing I look for is this clear or is it clever?
Mhm.
And clear is much more important than clever.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, it gets too clever and some of the clarity gets lost, which is what's happening for you on that slogan.
Yeah.
But I could definitely see how, to his base, that would make a lot of sense. Of course, most presidential elections, they kind of, well, you could go either way. Some people say if you can just get the base riled up enough to get out and vote, that takes care of it. Some people say you gotta sway the middle,
Sure,
one way or the other. I'm not sure which is correct. Probably a little of both. So yeah, does Build Back Better sway the middle vote?
Yeah,
that would be the question for sure.
Okay, let's try another one.
Okay.
Let's try this one. How does this sound? This one's been used this week. I heard it. Jobs, not mobs.
Yeah.
They're pretty creative.
Yeah. I mean, it rhymes. So that's always good. We've talked about rhyming before, right?
Yep.
So that's good. Yeah, same thing. It's going to appeal to one base, but not the other. Right. Because mobs is going to be counter to, that's going to be insulting to one side, to the left.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're alienating one particular demographic. Well, let's say one area that votes a certain way. Yeah, absolutely.
One side of the aisle for sure. Yeah. Right. Because you're calling the protesters, you're calling all that. You're kind of putting everybody in the mobs category. Right.
Yeah.
So even people that are honestly protesting, because I think protest is good. Like I'm kind of happy that there's been more protests on both sides recently. Like I think as Americans, we kind of lost our protesting, so I think it's kind of good that it's come back. I don't agree with the rioting, but that's me, so, but I get it.
If rioting, if that has made you feel, if you have a level of fear against what you've seen and you associate that with mobs and then you use a comparison or a contrast, contrast is very persuasive, right?
Yep.
So when you're contrasting two things and you use that, with the sounding very similar, mobs or jobs, not mobs.
Right. Yeah.
There's a clear contrast right there.
Yeah. And it forces you to pick a side.
Right. Are you going to be with creating more jobs or creating, building back after, I assume what it means, building back after, COVID-19, getting more jobs back? Or are you with the state of the way things have been, which is another clear comparison of like looking back, what's been going on in the last two months. So kind of interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah. And we'll see more of these phrases come out, over the next 5 months until election.
Right.
So yeah, but it's just amazing to watch just how politicians in general, both sides, just how quickly and how good their slogans typically are. I mean, it's amazing how fast they pump them out. And like we said, the names of bills, the names of any types of, I mean, a lot of stuff. And even some of the protests, I mean, they come out, the different names that come out, Black Lives Matters. That's a great slogan.
Right.
Obviously it infuriates some people, but the fact is it's super memorable.
It's very memorable. Yeah.
And it makes a point, whether you agree with it or not. Like it's in the common vocabulary now.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do. Like to create a phrase that sticks into and becomes just a part of everyday language is not easy to do. No. So the fact that there's been so many of those lately is like I said, we're just living in like a little lab of persuasion right now.
Exactly.
Unlike we've seen in a long time.
Sure.
So, Well, man, we've been going for an hour and 10 minutes. So
Yep. I think we should wrap up. You know, I'm flat out of beer. I know you are.
Yeah,
Even
me
though this
too.
is an IPA, I drank it anyway.
Well, when you're stuck behind the microphone, you got to do what you got to do.
You got to clear the throat. Yeah. All right,
So,
guys. Well, thanks for listening. As always, you can find us over at persuasionbythepint.com. You can find us on all of your podcast platforms. Just look us up if you're new to the show, and we'd appreciate it. Leave us 5 stars if you like what you hear. And also, as Sean mentioned earlier, I don't remember if I'm thinking it was this episode, but we do have a Facebook group. You can find us over at facebook.com/groups/persuasion by the pint. And feel free to join the group. It's not a private or anything like. Well, actually, you have to put your name on the list, and then we'll just admit you in. But yeah, feel free to join the group there, and each of these episodes go straight to the group. So,
also our sponsor.
Oh yeah, you know what? We got to mention the sponsor at the beginning.
Yep.
All right, so this episode is brought to you by our friends over at Craft Beer Club. You can find them by visiting persuasionbythepint.com/craft beer and take a look at their. I mean, you can sign up for their monthly membership. You can buy kind of a one-off. They're great gifts. They buy from, or they select from, some of the best craft breweries across the U.S. Put together kind of an assortment for you. And, according to what your preferences are. So if you don't like IPAs, don't worry about it. You're not going to get IPAs. You get to kind of sign up and put what your preference is, and you're going to get those every month. And it's a good deal. They're great gifts to give out to customers, clients, and also just if you like beer in general. You don't want to go to the grocery store. You don't want to go to Publix. You don't want to go to, AT, what is it? Where do you go?
HEB.
Yeah.
HEB. Yeah. So
you don't want to go there.
HEB, Publix,
you don't want to wear
Safeway.
a mask.
Yeah.
This is the place to do. You got your beer taken care of right there. So
absolutely.
All right, guys, we enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
See ya.
All right. Let's see. End.